So, Karen, how would you like to play 3-Question Thursday?
I'd love to.
All
Let's do it.
right. You know, this has been so interesting about parts work, internal family systems, but I'd like
Mhm.
you to go into more depth. This could be 3 questions, really, but could you go into more depth with these 3 parts? Unless there are more, but I think you said firefighter, manager, and exile.
Mhm.
You take the one first, firefighter. What is
Mhm.
that part inside of us?
What does it do? It's a distractor. Its whole job is to make sure that the exile doesn't come out of lockup. So it's on guard to see if there's any feelings coming up. And generally, an exile is connected to a group, and at some stage, I've come across a dozen of protectors, firefighters wrapped around one exile. The exile was in a particularly complicated situation, and the situation happened several times, or a number of times. So it had a couple of managers and a couple of firefighters that were very strong and very opposed to each other. So the firefighter being the distractive one, the messy one, the one that overdrinks, the one that overeats, the one that goes out and spends all the money.
Procrastinates too?
And procrastinates too. Yeah,
Got one of those.
absolutely. Yeah, me too. Yeah.
Okay, so
Yeah. Yeah. That's the firefighter, and their idea is, if you can imagine the dog in the movie Squirrel, it's like it's off, it's impulsive, it's driven. Whereas the other side of the equation, the manager, is compulsive. It must do this in order for the world to be right, and it plans forward. So if I can talk about one of my little managers, the 5-year-old going into class late, and the teacher running from the other side of the room and yelling in my face, and I can still see her face. And I got a fright. I got frightened at that stage. And the kids in the class, not that they were the most compassionate bunch, they laughed at me. So I had the fright of her, and then wrapped around that was the embarrassment of being laughed at. And so at that time in my life, one of my parts was given a job as manager. Here, what I want you to do now is to make this girl 5 minutes early for everything. So if I wasn't able to be 5 minutes early, which meant on time in their mind, I would have anxiety up through the roof. Oh. It just had to be early, or it wasn't going to be okay. Because of what happened. Walking into the classroom late, yelling teacher, embarrassing kids.
Boom.
And it wasn't till I got to know IFS, and it's very experiential when you're learning. You don't do this theoretically, you do it in practice on self. And I got to know her, and she was just trying to do the right thing by me. She didn't want me to get yelled at and embarrassed again.
Yeah. So this was the anxiety that would come up.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Can you talk a little bit more about the exile part?
Yeah. So the exile that I dealt with when I decided to do BLE was a 4-year-old. And
this is your own?
This is my own. She grew up, she's adopted. I'm adopted. She came to the family at 2 weeks of age as a baby. And the family she came to had an older brother for her. So another adopted boy who was about 2.5 years older than me.
Okay.
Anyway, he's a meanie. He's a bully. He's a nasty person. Still is, actually. But back then he was quite brutal. And unfortunately, my dear parents had no view of this at all, had no idea. So in other words, the little 4-year-old wasn't seen or heard in the need that she had to be seen or heard. I talk about needs and capacities.
Yes.
Yeah, she had a need to be seen and heard, and the parents had no capacity to do that for her. So food worked. So in the work I did, I found her sitting on the back steps of my house as a child with an NMF in her hand, and she was gobbling her feelings. She was really full on into the food. And it was such an overdose at that stage that it made her feel sick, physically sick. But the next time it happened, she went back to the food because it was reliable. It was there. And she felt like she was being attended to. And so this was a little one that thought, and the managers around her that thought, if I take the food away, she's got nothing. The feelings were so intense that how would she deal? Anyway, the process was that I got to know the protectors above her, and they recognised me as an adult and I can deal. And so I went down to talk to her and soothe her and cuddle her and release her from the beliefs that she didn't matter. It was quite intense, actually. We had a wonderful bonfire, getting rid of all of those beliefs. And she picked up the qualities of compassion for herself and clarity of mind and confidence. So in picking those up, it's changed my life. And here I was at 63, making life-changing work within myself. And from that day on, knowing that I do matter has been such a life changer, because I don't need to people please anymore. I can turn people down and going, no, I don't have time for that. Or I can't do that now. Can I do that later? All sorts of things have been made possible because I know I matter. So is that the sort of thing you mean?
That is so amazing. So I lied, because this was going to be first question, second, third with those 3 parts. But I want to ask you another question. And now I'm forgetting what it was. Oh, I know. You mentioned earlier that there's a book that everybody should read.
Oh, yes.
What is that?
Yes. It's The 4 Agreements, and it's by Don Miguel Ruiz. And I'll put a link in to the Facebook page. Okay. It is fabulous. Can I tell you about the 4 Agreements?
Yes.
It'll be short. All right. The first one is, and I'm reading from this to make sure I get it right, be impeccable with your word. And his reasoning is your word is the power that you have to create. What you say has ripples throughout the world, but also internally. And I read this, oh gosh, I must have been very young, a long time ago. And yet it's still, why I love it, it still meshes with my values and my ethics in the world and what I'm learning more and more. Parts work even it meshes with. The word is force, and the power you have to express it and communicate it either to others or to yourself is huge. But it talks about being impeccable, keeping your word. It talks about not gossiping. It's those sorts of things that are so important. Okay.
Yes.
The next one is don't take anything personally. What someone says about you is actually all about them. Oh. So if I say, Noreen, you're looking beautiful today.
There you
can
are.
say thank you. You can say thank you, but you must realize that that's through my experience of beauty, what my judgment is about beauty, and what I believe is a good look. This is all about me.
It's about you.
It is. So you can imagine if it's not a compliment, but some other type of word, it's all about the other person.
Wow.
And the filters they look through and the way they view the world, their upbringing, what's important to them, all those sorts of things.
Wow. Okay. That says a lot.
This is life-changing, like I said. If we can live this way, so much freedom. The next one is don't make assumptions. Take the time to check in with someone. So I heard you say this. Is this what you meant? Because we can hear things and then make a whole story about them that doesn't actually exist.
Yeah.
It does take a bit of courage sometimes to actually ask those follow-up questions, but it's really, really worth it.
Wow.
And even if you're checking in with arrangements that have been made, just double check. So, am I right? This is what we agreed to. Double check those sorts of things. And the final one is always do your best. Now, which means if you're having a great day, do your best. If you're having a poorly day, do your best. And the whole reason is that there'll be no regret.
Right.
There'll be no looking back and go, oh, I could have been better. I could have done differently. It's different. Your best will be different when you're healthy, opposed to being sick, opposed to being sober, opposed to being drunk, opposed to being in the food, opposed to being out of the food. Do your best.
Yeah.
That's it.
And if things aren't bright on your best, you give yourself
Then,
a heart. Have integrity about the day and just move on. You did your
and speak gently to yourself.
Wow.
Yep.
Karen, wow, wow, wow. Thank you so much. Thank you for sharing your story, your information. We're going to have your information in the Starting Out Bright private group on Facebook. So people go over there, and you can also look in the slideshow if you're looking at this on YouTube, and you'll see Karen's Inner Harmony website there too. So thank you so much. And thank you for playing 3-Question Thursday.
That was fun. Thanks so much.
Just such a delight to get to know you. I appreciate it. So thanks again. And thank you, everyone. Stay bright.
Bye all.
Good night.